اگر ہو سر کی ضرورت تو سر بھی دیتے ہیں، تقی نظر بھی شعور نظر بھی دیتے ہیں، سخی ہے ایسے کہ جواد نام ہے ان کا، خدا کی راہ میں یہ گھر کا گھر بھی دیتے ہیں۔ سبحان اللہ،
Now I would like to request Ehsan uncle, inshallah, to come recite for us. Now salawat for Ehsan uncle.
نعرہ صلوات،
والنبي خدا ختم انبیاء و حضرت بلند صلوات سنبھل دل سنبھل دل سنا قرار ہو جائے، سنبھل دل سنا در قرار ہو جائے، یہیں بیٹھے رے یہیں بیٹھے رہیں، جنت میں گھر تیار ہو جائے، یہیں بیٹھے رہیں، جنت میں گھر تیار ہو جائے، سنبھل اے دل میرا ذوق جنوں اچھا نہیں لگتا جہاں والوں، میرا ذوق جنوں اچھا نہیں لگتا جہاں والوں، مگر وہ کیا کرے حیدر سے جس کو پیار مگر وہ کیا کرے حیدر سے جس کو پیار ہو جائے، سنبھل اے دل ہوئی ہو پر ورش جس کی ابو طالب کے دامن میں، ہوئی ہو پر ورش جس کی ابو طالب کے دامن میں، کوئی حیدر تو کوئی احمد مختار ہو جائے، کوئی حیدر تو کوئی
کوئی احمد مختار ہو جائے میری ماں نے مجھے نادری پڑھ کر دعا دی ہے میری ماں نے مجھے نادری پڑھ کر دعا دی ہے میرا بچہ غلام میسا میں کمار ہو جائے غلام میسا میں کمار ہو جائے یہیں بیٹھے رہیں جنت میں گھر تیار ہو جائے اس اطمینان کے صدقے کے خالق کی رضا لے لی کہ اس اطمینان کے صدقے کے خالق کی رضا لے لی وہاں سوئے جہاں سوتا ہوا بیدار ہو جائے جہاں سوتا ہوا بیدار ہو جائے
جزاک اللہ سبحان اللہ
I would like to request now Shamako to, before the Wada comes for Taqi lecture, to come please say a few words that he has to share. So, salawat for Shamako. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It looks like the Majlis today is only male, only few ladies here.
They're coming.
Yeah, hopefully they will join us. Inshallah, we'll have more people tomorrow. I just want to tell you we are honored to have Dr. Sayyid Shabir Kermani visiting. So he will teach us and learn from his knowledge. MashaAllah, he has a long history of lecturing for about 12 years in America, Europe, and India. He has a bachelor degree in economic mathematics and computer science, a master in engineering, and he had a PhD also. Dr. Kermani currently serves as the resident scholar at Masjid Al-Hayy in Orlando, Florida. And again, we thank him for being with us. And, let's greet him with loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
برحبیب خدا ختم انبیاء آواز بلند صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد
مولانا کی صحت اور سلامتی کے صلوات کا سہارا دے جناب
اللهم صل على محمد
اور اس سے بھی ایک جاگتی ہوئی صلوات کا سہارا دے جناب
اللهم صل على محمد
نعرہ
روح شهدای اسلام بلند صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Please recite the Surah Al-Fatiha for the sponsors of Mahmoud for your Mahmoud, for all those who help make this message possible, and for all those who recite the Fatiha for them. Please recite the Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah. Yeah.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فوضوا أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير. والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
محمد وعلى محمد.
وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل لا اسالكم عليه اجرا الا الموده في القربى. صدق الله العلي العظيم. زينوا مجالسكم بالصلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
My respected elders, brothers and sisters, Imam here in South Carolina, wherever you're hearing my voice, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: what is the common goal of all of the Imams? We're told there's a moment in time where the sixth holy Imam, Ja'far as-Sadiq sallallahu wa salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
he is on his deathbed. He's in his final moments, and his family is gathered around him. And this person is that individual who established or strengthened the institution of Medina. That is the University of Medina that was laid, the foundation was laid by Rasulullah. But ultimately his father laid the foundation and then he made it strengthened and he spread the knowledge. He's in his final moments, the narrations say. And this sixth Imam, at that moment you save your breath for the most important thing when you're in your final moments. You want to say that which is most important. For example, we were told when Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali is in his final moments, he tells his family and he tells his close ones, Allah, Allah fil aitam, Allah, Allah fil masakin, Allah, Allah fil Quran. He says, Allah, Allah, point of emphasis, he's emphasizing. He says, do not forget who? The orphans. Do not forget the miskin, the people who are poor, those who are unfortunate. And he says, don't forget Allah, Allah fil Quran. Do not forget the Quran. Meaning, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali is telling us what are some of our priorities. Look after the downtrodden, look after those orphans who have no one to look after, and make sure you look after and implement the teachings of the Quran. The same way, the sixth Imam, the narration says, he's in his final moments, and he says a line. Now, a ma'soom, an Imam, does not exaggerate. And at that moment, he says that I wish I were there, and I wish I would be alive to see him. They said, Yabna Rasulullah, who are you referring to? Who are you talking about? Who do you wish to see? He says, I wish I would live to see Ali Muhammad. At that point in time, one thinks to themselves that Ali Muhammad, as in, who is Ali Muhammad? You would think that Imam Sadiq would be Ali Muhammad, in the sense that we are called Ja'fari. We follow the madhab of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and fiqh and jurisprudence. That if anyone was a scholar, that is all of the schools of fiqh within Islam go back to Imam Sadiq, whether it's Shia or Sunni. Because the teachers of the two scholars of Ahlul Sunnah were the students of the Imam. And so at that point in time, we think who this is. And the ulama come forward, and the Ahlul Bayt say that reference, that this person said, that is the sixth Imam, the reference he was referring to was none other than our eighth holy Imam, Imam al-Rida, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Therefore, tonight, in the brief moments that we have together, we want to look at the life of the 8th Imam very quickly, but also the life of the 9th Imam as well. So, inshallah, we'll look at the father and the son to try to understand what lessons can we take in our lives from their lives, and how, when you look at their life, the things at their time were actually pretty similar to our times. That the nature of human beings often does not change. Therefore, in this conversation, I want to look at a few things. Number one, what is the common goal of all of the Imams? That is, if you were to draw a line from the first to the last, could you draw one common line that connects all of them, one string that connects them? That is, sometimes we see one Imam stood up, one Imam apparently stayed silent, one Imam did this, one Imam did that. But was there a common goal amongst them? And if so, what is that common goal? Number one. Number two, what was the environment surrounding the time of the 8th Imam? What was happening right before? What was happening during the time of the 8th Imam? And who were the people in leadership and ruling at that time? The next thing is, why was he called Al-Rada? Why is that title given to the Imam? And what can it teach us about his life? The next thing that we'll look at, the fourth thing, is why was he called Alim Ali Muhammad? In a family where everyone is an Alim and everyone is the Alim Ali Muhammad. What was the significance of this Imam getting that particular title? And then we will move into the life of his son and what was the circumstance and the change that happened during the time of the 9th Imam, Imam Jawad. At the next level, we'll then look at why is he called Jawad? Why is he called Taqi? Why were these titles given to the Imam, so we understand this? And another level, what we'll look at is what was the knowledge of the Imam at a young age? And the key question here we'll look at is age a requirement to be a leader within Islam or not? And what does the life of Imam Jawad tell us about this particular question? And inshallah, we will commemorate Ahlul Bayt and their martyrdom, inshallah, tonight. This is our agenda for the brief moments we are together. Wherever you are, here in South Carolina or across the world, wherever you're hearing my voice, from the bottom of your heart, send a salawat on Muhammad. At the first level, it's a tremendous honor to be here first at this in South Carolina in this blessed center. I see some familiar faces and I see some new faces as well. It's a blessing to see the mu'mineen wherever they may be. And it's a beautiful gift that you have given to the community, but also the Ahlul Bayt have given you here to have this center where the dhikr of the Ahlul Bayt and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are ultimately raised. And I applaud you for that. So for the prosperity of this community and its future, please recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad. At the first level, you will find that I speak fast. I will try to slow it down, but please try to stay with me. I'll try to be a little slower. You also try to keep with me. There's a reason. There's a very particular reason as to why I take the time to try to lecture. And the reason is, and I'll try to make that more clear tomorrow, you will find that the trajectory, if you look at those communities that came to America before us, the Jewish community, the Catholic community, and other faiths, if you read their history, it will give you very clear indications that what can happen to us in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And those people who have heard me in Charlotte or in Raleigh, Durham or other places, they know where I'm going with this. And if it's very important for us to make sure that we are addressing the needs of all in the community, young and old, and make sure that their questions are answered to their satisfaction. Because if that does not happen, you will understand tomorrow what will be the result, inshallah. At the first level, when we come to the lives of these blessed Imams, what is the common goal amongst the Imams? That is, when we look at the life of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, after Rasulullah, he comes forward and the people do not give him his right, as you know. The first, second, third, they come and they take the right of the Imam. And the Imam eventually becomes the fourth Khalifa. Of course, for us, he's Khalifatuhu bila fasl. He's not dependent on the seat, of course. But this is what happened in society. We come to the time of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Ultimately, Imam Hassan, by the way, people say Imam Hassan didn't want to fight. Imam Hassan was ready to fight. And he was saying the people were not supporting Imam Hassan. Nonetheless, ultimately, Imam Hassan signs a peace treaty with Muawiyah. But he actually exposed Muawiyah through that peace treaty. Now, what's very important for us to know is Imam Hussein alayhi salam rises and he fights on the plains of Karbala. You know these things. But what I want you to understand and reflect on, whether Imam Hassan alayhi salam signs a peace treaty or Imam Hussein alayhi salam goes to the battlefield, their stand is the same. In fact, what you and I need to make sure is that when we look at the Sunnah of Imam Hassan, the Sunnah of Imam Hassan is not just the Sunnah of Imam Hassan. It's actually the Sunnah of Hassanain, Imam Hassan and Hussein. Why? The reason is, when Imam Hassan alayhi salam wrote the peace treaty with Muawiyah and he put the conditions, he exposed Muawiyah because Muawiyah did not abide by any of the tenets and the principles of the peace treaty. But why do I say it's the Sulh al-Hasanain? Because when Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam left this world, for 10 years Muawiyah lived and Imam Hussein alayhi salam abided by that peace treaty. So that means Imam Hussein was there during that time accepting what his brother had done. But ultimately when Muawiyah violated the principle that he will not give the Khilafah to his son afterwards, and the Khilafah will go back to Ali Muhammad and will go back to Imam Hussein, and when Muawiyah violated that and Yazid took power, then the Imam rose. And then we take the Imam time of Imam Sajjad afterwards, Imam Bakr. But when someone looks at this and reads the history, they'll think the Imams, one's rising, one's peace treaty, one's fighting. Are they doing something different? One's going here, one's going there. What do the ulama say? What do the scholars say? The scholars say the one common goal, if you were to draw a line from all of the Imams in every zaman and makan, in every time and every space, the common goal amongst all of the Imams from awwal to akhir and awsat was hifzuddin wa hifzuddima. Hifzuddin wa hifzuddima meaning what? Hifz means preservation or protection. You know, hafiz of Quran comes from that, preserving the verse of the Quran, the same root word. Hifzuddin, preserving the deen, preserving the faith, preserving the religion. Preserving the faith, wa hifzuddima. Dima meaning what? Dima meaning blood. Blood of who? Blood of the believers. That is, to make sure that the believers did not die unnecessarily. The Ahlul Bayt were trying to minimize and mitigate bloodshed, not maximize it. Throughout time, their main goal, Hifzuddin wa Hifzuddima, to protect and preserve the faith and to protect and preserve the faithful. So whether Imam Hassan alayhi salam or Imam Hussein alayhi salam, in the situation where Imam Hassan is there, he is not only protecting the faith, but he's protecting the lives of the faithful, the Shia. And we'll come to in a moment what happened over time. But when it came to the time of Imam Hussein, he's protecting the lives of the Shia, but also Islam itself was on the line. So he had to protect and preserve the faith by giving his blood. So when we say that we are Husseini and we always stand up, we sometimes don't realize that every Imam, based on their time and space, their zaman and makan, they had a different approach to the same common goal. That's why we don't always take what many Shias say, according to ulama, what many Shias actually end up propagating today is actually a Zaydi view, Zaydi Shia view, not a Ithna Ashari Shia view. The Zaydi Shia view is that every time you go to the battlefield and fight. But when you come to the Ithna Ashari, the 12 Imami view of Shiism and revolution, it is sometimes with the sword and sometimes with the pen, and sometimes with the tongue, and sometimes another mechanism and means. Your job and my job is to see the lives of the Imams and what aspect and what time and what space reflects our lives as much as possible and how we can connect to that time as much as possible and solve problems based on that. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now coming to the time of the 8th Imam, Imam al-Rafa. Now remember, the 7th Imam, his father, is spending a lot of time in prison. He has been in prison for at least 14 years, Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. But subhanAllah, despite this, he had the most children of any Imam. That is the Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. He had those over 30 children. This Imam was living during the time of the Abbasids, that is the Abbasid rulers. During the time of Rasulullah, after Rasulullah, the Umayyads came to power. Uthman, the third Khalifa, is technically the first Umayyi ruler from Banu Umayyah. After him, Muawiyah and others came, and eventually this was the dynasty. Afterwards came the Abbasids. The first Abbasid ruler, his name is Saffah. After Saffah comes to power Mansur, who is known as Mansur al-Dawanihi. Mansur al-Dawanihi is the one who established Baghdad, not original Baghdad, modern day Baghdad. Original Baghdad is very old civilization, Mesopotamia, it's the cradle of civilization. But modern Baghdad was re-established by Mansur al-Dawanihi. Mansur came forward and he says that I'm going to build this city, which was going to be the biggest city of that time and the most prominent city of the time, I should say. Now, when it came to building the city, at that time, and still sometimes in the world, when they build the city, they would build a wall around the city. You know, in the old times, there would be a main gate to the city, and that gate would be closed at night to protect the city so nobody would ambush from behind or some other place. So they would have this big wall built. Now, why am I telling you this? Mansour said, we're going to build this wall. You know, when you came to build this mosque, this Husseini at the center, there were preparations you had to make. You had to make the planning, the blueprints, and all the material. So Mansour gets there and he gets all his architects, he gets his engineers, he gets everyone in the room. He says, we want to build Baghdad, we want to build this new city, we want to build the wall, we want to establish it, and we want to build the wall around it. He said, what do you need? He said, we need this, and we need that, we need the blueprints, we need some material. What material we need? We need cement, and we need water to build the bricks and to build the walls. He said, I don't want this. So what do you mean? He said, cement is fine. He said, I don't want water. So what do you mean, what do you want? He said, I want blood. Blood? He says, I don't want you to put water in the cement. I want you to put the blood of the Sayyid Hassanis in the cement. The Sadat Hassani, their blood, you will slaughter them, drain their blood into the cement and mix it, and that's how you will make the walls of Baghdad. Number one. Number two, on top of that, those Sadat, those Shias that were living, in particular Sayyid Hassani, as you know, there are two main branches from the line of Ali and Fatima. Also, we'll hopefully shed light on this maybe tomorrow if I permit, is the wedding of Amir al-Mu'minin and Fatima al-Zahra according to the narration on the first of the Hijjah. Nonetheless, there's two lines, the line of Imam Hassan alayhi salam and the line of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Many of the Sadat, myself and others, they come from the Husseini line, but there are many Sadat who are from the Hassani line. For example, the Al-Tabatabai family, the Al-Hakim family, these are all Hassani Sadat. In northern Africa, in Morocco and other parts, you will find them. In the Middle East, you will find many of them. But there was a lot of persecution that happened to the lineage of the Ahlul Bayt. So what happened? They would even kill the Sayyids living inside, while they were alive, they would close the two doors on the walls on both sides, and they would suffocate to death. This is why people ask, how did Shias and how does, for example, Sadat end up in the subcontinent, in India, for example, and other places, in obscure places that you would never imagine? In fact, if you go towards Central Europe and you go towards Russia and the former Soviet Union, you will find till this day villages of Sadat who are from the lines of the Ahlul Bayt who went there, and you're like, how did they end up here? And that what happened was this persecution, to the point that this hatred and animosity to the Ahlul Bayt was so extensive that they would not let a single person survive. That's why they say during the time of the seventh Imam, up to the time of the seventh Imam, those Sadat who were from the line of the Ahlul Bayt and Rasulullah, there used to be a fragrance that used to come from their bodies. The same way, when Rasulullah used to pass by an alley or a street in Medina, you would smell the fragrance for 3 days, the narration say. Similar, maybe not that strong, but similarly, there was a fragrance that came from the Sadat. Imam al-Kadhim, according to narrations, he did a dua to remove and revoke this smell because people used to tell the Sadat based on this and kill them. I am saying this because there were many difficulties that this religion went through in order to get to you and I in 2022 in South Carolina. It was not easy to get the Iman in your heart. Your ancestors, my ancestors, paid in blood for you and I to follow the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. So what I'm saying is make this a priority in your life. Make time. What is a priority in life you make time for? You have education, make time for that. By the way, that is part of your deen, that is part of your faith. Similarly, make time to learn the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. So Mansour does this. And then they were constantly plotting, the Abbasids, to make sure that they have a strong control on what's going on in society. So what did they do? To try to stay in power, they tried to make sure that they, for example, keep a close tab on who are the people who may be their opposition. I'll give you an example. If you read the history of American foreign policy, which is becoming a big issue today, you're seeing the world's dynamics shifting. Whereas the US has historically been the hegemony or the superpower, before the US you would find, for example, the United Kingdom, and before the United Kingdom, for example, you would find even the financial hub or one of the superpowers were actually the Dutch, the Netherlands, Holland, and before that it was the Ottomans, Sultanate Osmania, the Turks. Those were the superpowers. Now our world is shifting towards China and other parts which are becoming and rising and taking over. But one of the policies, I was reading the US foreign policy, and I invite you to read this. One system of how the US policy works is to not, on an international level, is not only make sure that we maintain hegemony and be the superpower, but it's also to make sure no one else rises to become a factor. So you have to prevent that. So you have to know who your opposition is on the other side. By the way, any superpower has done this historically. When Muslims were in power, they did the same thing. In fact, worse. So it's not like it's the issue of power struggle. And so nonetheless, at this time, the same thing was happening during the Abbasids' time. They said, we need to stay in power. Any threat, we need to curb it, we need to destroy it. So what happened? They came forward and they said, look, here's the situation. we want to take this individual, and they imprisoned the seventh Imam. During the time of the eighth Imam, they realized that imprisoning him didn't work. So what do? They took the eighth Imam and they came forward and they said that we will now make him the heir apparent, the crown prince, the Wali al-Ahad. So at that point in time, when this happens around this time, we're told in that narrations, Harun al-Abbasi is the one who comes to power. After the likes of Mansur al-Dawani, after some time, Harun al-Abbasi. Now one thing that's important to note is, we don't call him, sometimes when we don't know the Arabic, we say certain things we don't realize. For example, if you ask certain people, they will say the first four Khulafa, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, they are Khulafa Rashidin. Now, if you know Arabic, Rashidin means rightly guided. As Shia, we never say Khulafa Rashidin because we don't accept them to be the Rashidun. We don't accept them to be rightly guided, at least not the first three. So we say the Khulafa. The same way, we never say Harun al-Rashid. Why? Because if you translate Rashid, that means rightly guided. That means Harun al-Rashid translates to Aaron the rightly guided. If we accepted him to be rightly guided, we follow him. So we always say Harun al-Abbasi because he was part of the Abbasid dynasty. It's important to understand this. Now Harun comes to power. After him comes his son. When his son comes to power, he gets all of his people in the court. And he says that who is someone who could be an opposition to me, who could take my power, who's a threat to my kingdom? He says, look, here's the situation. Ma'mun is the person in power. He says that there's three possibilities. The wazirs, the court advisors say. Number one possibility is this wazir who's not here with us right now, but he's very cunning and very sly, and he's a kingmaker, and he could be the king himself. He's a threat. Ma'mun says, okay, very well. He said, who else? He says, number two is your own brother, Amin. He can be a threat too. He can take over the kingdom. He says, okay. These two, don't worry. I'll take care of them. So who's the third? So the third person, his name is Ali. Ali son of who? Son of Musa. Ali is Musa. He said he's from the line of Ahlul Bayt. He's the Imam of the Rafida, the Imam of the Shia. Really? What does he have? Does he have money? Does he have power? Does he have glory? Does he have a seat? What does he have? He says he doesn't have these things from the worldly perspective, but he has one thing that you don't have. He says what? He says, in him you will find that the people on the ground, they have his love in their hearts. And you don't have this. And that's the most powerful thing. And at that point he said, this is something that we must do. So what did he do? He plotted and he planned. He said, what can we do? He decided to have the Imam shifted from Medina, from the Hijaz, towards Marv and Khurasan, towards modern-day Iran. And this is when the Imam made that movement towards that location. And when the Imam made the movement towards that location, the narrations say the ninth Imam was roughly 5 years of age. He was very young at the time. And the narrations say that the Imam, the ninth Imam, Imam al-Jawad, as a young boy, apparently, he took sand and he put the dust on his head. And his father said, my son, why are you doing this? Of course, he knows he's the Imam, but to tell you and I, he says, my father, I know this is the last time that I will see you in the physical, alive form. And Imam al-Rada left towards what was Allah's word. At that point in time, when he gets there, a principle that comes forward here is that Imam takes on the heir apparent rule. One lesson that comes from here, and there's something that is a difference of opinion amongst the scholars. Some scholars say, look, the Imam was in a political position. Now, if you reverse and you go during the time of the seventh Imam, during the seventh Imam had a companion by the name of Ali bin Yaqtin. You may have heard of this name. Ali bin Yaqtin was a person who was appointed by the seventh Imam to take on a position. Ali bin Yaqtin, he went to the Imam and said, Ya Rasulullah, he told the seventh Imam, I have this opportunity to actually be in a formal capacity a member of the government. Now the government at the time was not a good government, it was a tyrannical government, they were Zalimin. So can I be in this position? And the Imam says that if you can help the Shi'as and you can reduce their suffering, then you are to be in that position. Now, principle, can we apply this or not? There's two views amongst the scholars. One group, and I need to be fair to explain this to you. One group of the ulama say, look, you cannot apply the rule of Ali bin Yaqtin to anyone today. Why? They say because the Imam is the one who allowed and appointed Ali bin Yaqtin to say to Ali bin Yaqtin, you can go and serve. And the Imam is that individual who looks at people and he knows what is in their zahir and their batin. For example, in battle, Malik al-Ashtar and Amir al-Imam Ali are in battle. When Imam Ali and Malik al-Ashtar, Imam Ali says, Malik is to me like I was to Rasulullah. Now this person, they are fighting. Malik eventually kills one enemy, Amir al-Mu'min kills one. One, two. Eventually Malik looks towards Amir al-Mu'min, that's what he says. He said, yeah, Amir al-Mu'min, today I killed as many people as you did. And Amir al-Mu'min smiles at him. He said, but there is a difference between your killing and my killing. He says, what do you mean? He says, when you kill whoever is striking you in front of you. He says, but when someone comes to strike me, I look 7 generations down his line to see is there a believer that is going to come from his line. I'm not only trying to finish him off, I'm seeing is there some potentiality of belief in his belief system. The same way when Imam al-Qadhi was appointing Ali bin Yaqin, he said that I know that you have the taqwa and you have the ability to be in this position and you will not lose it. And when Ali bin Yaqin made a mistake, the Imam corrected him. And Ali bin Yaqin accepted it because there's a Shia who Ali bin Yaqin said, I don't have the time to meet him. And Imam al-Qadhi said, when Ali bin Yaqin came to visit him, he said, I don't have the time to meet Ali bin Yaqin. Now, Ali bin Yaqin didn't get arrogant. He became humble and he humbled himself. There's another discussion for another day. Now coming to the time of Imam al-Rida, there is another view of scholars in this situation that they say that no, the principles that were laid out during the time of the Imams is principles for you and I. That is, if we can use our taqwa and we are God conscious and we are good people, we should get involved in politics. We should get involved in society. We should get, for example, be the mayor of the city. We should, for example, be commissioner of the city. We should be part of the school board. We should be involved in these parts of society to make sure that we are making the world a better place, reducing suffering of people and doing these things. There are some things that you and I need to make sure in our communities that we address. Number one, make sure that you have civic engagement in the community. As a 501c3, I'm not here to tell you who to vote for. You can decide who to do that. But make sure you're involved in the process. Make sure your voice is heard. Because remember, in the system of civic engagement in politics, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. And it's important to make sure that you are at the table and conversation to make sure your voice is heard. And alhamdulillah, what's beautiful about American democracy is that you can be part of the system. I would invite you to read a book called Thomas Jefferson's Quran. You know when Congressman Keith Ellison, who was the first Muslim congressman, was elected from Minnesota, when he came forward to be elected, he said, you have to take an oath, you have to swear in. When they came forward and he said that I want to swear in, what's beautiful about America is they came forward and says you have to swear in. Now typically people swear in on the Bible. Keith Ellison said, I'm a Muslim. My holy book is the Quran. They said, no problem, we will accommodate you. They brought him a copy of the Quran. They went to the Library of Congress, the oldest library or the largest library in the world, and they brought him a copy of the Quran, but not just any copy of the Quran to swear in. They brought him an old copy of the Quran that was written on it, the letters TJ. TJ standing for Thomas Jefferson, the founding father of America, who laid out the Constitution of America. Why did he have a Quran? In fact, he had reading the Quran over 200 years ago to try and law. He bought the Quran one time as a law student, and then afterwards his library burnt, he bought another copy of the Quran, 200 years ago plus. In fact, they say that George law in America, civil law, is being influenced by Islamic law based on the Quran. So when you say that America doesn't know about Islam, if you go, you should those people who are bigots today perhaps, to read the history of the founding fathers and what was their relationship. Do you know the debate happened early in America in the founding fathers' time, during the time of Jefferson, that can a Muslim be the president of the United States? Over 200 years ago, in the 1700s. And all of them categorically said, yes, a Muslim can be president of the United States. There should be no issue. We should remind people about this. So what I'm saying is get involved in civic engagement. Make sure that you have an economic committee in your community to work on economic development. Right now, in 2007, 2009, was there not one of the worst recessions that happened just 10 years ago or so? 10, 12 years ago? The time is about to get bad now as well, coming up. What plan of action do we have in our communities to make sure that we try to help people during that time? Saving, investing, something. I'm not telling you how to manage your money. What I'm saying is when sometimes people lose their jobs or their businesses go down, they are suffering silently and you don't even know it. And oftentimes we don't have mechanisms. If community does not help each other, what's the purpose of community? Am I just here to check the box? This point is one of my biggest points. If we adopt, and this is what's happening coast to coast, a check the box culture, there will be no one here in 20 years, believe me. Where I'm saying this nationally and globally. You have to understand the essence of the matter. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, inshallah. Nonetheless, now coming time to Imam al-Rada. Imam al-Rada takes on the position of the heir apparent, but as soon as he takes it on, he says, look, I will not give any verdict. That is, he said that I'm taking this, and he made it clear, I'm being forced. He says, what's the point of taking this position if you will not give a verdict? He's saying indirectly that I'm being forced and I'm not doing this by choice. And he exposed him at that point. Now, at this point in time, why is he called Ar-Rada? The narrations say that Ar-Rada means the one who is accepted. Now, accepted by what do you mean? Because were not the Imams accepted? By the Shia, all the Imams are accepted. But what was the particularity with respect to Imam Ar-Rada? The ulama say is he was accepted not only in this dunya but also in the heavens. That is, on this earth and the heavens. But more importantly, he was accepted by, because all the Imams were accepted here and there. But he was accepted by the Khasa and the Amma. That is, he was accepted by close and the people who are general. And he was accepted by people who were the Shias and the non-Shias, and that role in that position. This is one of the reasons the ulama give. Now, why was he called Alim ya Alim Muhammad? The question that we asked earlier. Isn't everyone Alim? Isn't Imam Sadiq Alim? Isn't Imam Baqir Alim? Of course, Baqir split knowledge we'll talk about tomorrow, inshallah. Isn't he Alim? Of course. Isn't Imam Sadiq Alim? Of course. Aren't they ulama? Most definitely. What is the situation with respect to Imam al-Rada? Allow me to explain. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we come to the life of Imam al-Rada, we will find one thing in particular with respect to him. Is with respect to him, he was able to show and share the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt, not on a local level only, not only at a national level, but an international level, global. What happened during the time of the 8th Imam was he was able to express the knowledge internationally. I'll give you an example. The narrations say during the time of the 6th Imam was able to have the University of Medina, but he was not allowed to actually propagate outside of Medina. They kept a strong control on him. There was one satellite campus. You know, you have USC here, there's a satellite campus here, right? And then there's the other campus. Same way. There was Medina and there was Kufa. In Kufa, there was another Hawza, and everyone there, although the Imam was not physically there in Kufa, Imam Sadiq, everyone there, 900 students, were all saying, Al-Sadiq. They were all connected intellectually. But the Imam was not allowed to leave Hijaz to propagate. So it was confined because they were keeping a control on him. But when it came to the time of the 8th Imam, of course, 7th Imam's in prison. 8th Imam's time, because he's the heir apparent, the rulers would get all of the dignitaries from Byzantium, from Rome, from Persia, from throughout the Arab belt, from as far as India at the time, and they would come forward and they would have public debates with all religions. And the Imam would answer. In one of these circumstances, we're told that the ruler at the time, Mansur, he calls on a court gathering and he tells the Imam and he calls the Imam. He had planned it from before. But he says, look, Imam al-Rada, he said, Yabna Rasulullah, we just spontaneously have this gathering. Maybe you can answer some questions that they have. Imam said, very well. So there were some people who were the priests of Christianity, there were some rabbis, and there were some people of other faiths. And the Imam at that point in time says, very well, shall I begin or shall you begin? At that point in time, they said to the Imam began. At that point in time, Imam Rada begins to speak to the Christian community. At that time, with the leadership of the Christian community, and he says to them, at that point in time, that Isa alayhi salam, who was of course revered by us, but also them, of course, but he did not worship that much. He did not worship the most. He did not pray and fast the most. At that point in time, they got upset. How can you say that? How can you say that Isa alayhi salam, our Lord, because the principle of the Trinity had been there, as you know, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. He says, how can you say this? How can you disrespect our Lord, our Creator? How can you disrespect Jesus Christ? That you say that someone worshipped more than him, someone fasted more than him? At that point in time, the narration says the Imam looked back and he said that if you believe he is God, then can you please tell me who he was praying to? Can you please tell me who he was fasting for? That means that if he is God or the Son of God and you are saying this, then why was he praying and fasting? He should be praying and fasting to God. At that point in time, they did not have a response. By the way, side note, for our Christian friends are our friends, and the Quran invites us to build friendships. But it's very important for you and I to know the history of Christianity and why it's important. I'll give you an example. If you go, you have to know the history of, for example, how the Trinity came to be and who wrote the Bible. It's clear, according to Christianity today, that the Bible was not written by Jesus. That's 100% clear, according to historians, and it was the disciples afterwards. There's no doubt about this. The King James Bible is only about 500-600 years old. The most closest surviving Bible that exists is something called the Red Letter Bible. It's not the easiest one to find or get, but that's closest to the original Bible. Because remember, the original Bible was not in English; it was in Latin. It's been translated numerous times. But one of the things, the idea of the Trinity was going. But eventually came a man by the name of Constantine. Constantine was the ruler of the time. Constantine, you may have heard of a place called Constantinople. Today we call it Istanbul. Istanbul's old name was Constantinople. And Constantinople was named after Constantine. Constantine had a western capital and an eastern capital. His western capital was Rome, of course, the head of the church. And his eastern capital was Constantinople. Now, he wanted to unite his entire kingdom under one religion. And rulers have done this. For example, in the subcontinent India, there was a ruler by the name of Akbar. He was a Mughal ruler. He wanted to unite his entire kingdom under one religion. So he created a religion called Deen-e-Ilahi or Deen-e-Akbari. Both terms have been used. And he took elements of Hinduism and Islam and Christianity and he made one unity religion, one form of religion. It lasted about 100 years and it died out. So the same thing happened during the time of Constantine. Because religion has been used as a vehicle of power, Constantine said, I want to get all of my religion and dominion and all of my rulership under one form of Christianity. I don't want this one believing in Father, this and Son, and this and Holy Ghost. So what did he do? He called the Council of Nicaea. Now the seeds of the Trinity were already there, but it became state religion after Constantine. What happened? He called the Conference of Nicaea, the Council of Nicaea, and he put all the religious leaders of Christianity in a room. And he said, you need to decide amongst yourselves what will be the form of Christianity that we will all follow. So now imagine you put a Sunni, a Shia, and a Wahhabi in a room and tell them decide. At that point in time, 1 day passes, 2 days pass, 3 days pass, eventually there's no consensus, no agreement. So he said, what do you do? He said, Constance, you're not leaving until you come to some agreement. So what did they do? They came to a compromise. And they said the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. That's why till this day, intellectually, logically, no one can actually fathom. You have to say, I believe out of faith this concept. So it's important to know this because Christianity in its original form was the right religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in its original form, during the time of Nabi Isa. And Judaism in its original form was the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time. But changes have happened over time that have led this to happen. Now, the Imam then continues and has a debate and he addresses the rabbis, the Jews in the court, and he says to them, at that point in time, why is it that you believe that Musa is the representative, but you don't believe in Isa after him? And you don't believe in, of course, Rasulullah after that. By the way, if you ask the Jewish community, what is the position of Isa, or Jesus, peace be upon him, in Judaism, if you ask the Jewish community, they'll tell you, no, he has no position. In fact, he's considered a rebel, or he's not someone who is respected in the sense that he brought his own religion. He has no sacred nature in Judaism, of course. At that point in time, when it comes to this, he says that we believe in the miracle of Musa or Moses, the Jewish scholars and rabbis say, because his miracles were established. What do you mean his miracles were established? It's known that he went to, for example, the mount and he got the 10 Commandments. It's known that he had Yad al-Bayzan, that is where the light used to emanate from his hand. It's known that he had the staff of Musa, that is the staff which would become the serpent. These are known miracles. But Isa alayhi salam also had miracles. Isa also brought the dead back to life. That's a miracle. Rasulullah had the Quran in that time. So why is it that you accept those as established, whereas you don't accept the other ones that are established and documented? They did not have a response. And there was a longer debate, and there's many aspects which I invite you to read as homework, inshallah, where the Imam answered all of them. This was the life of Imam Rabah. Many things can be said. In fact, Ali Muhammad doesn't stop there. The languages the Imam spoke. If the Imam was here today, would he be able to speak to us in Farsi or Arabic or Urdu or English? Allow me to explain. We are told the Imam had companions who used to live as far as Sindh at that time. You know, modern day Sindh. They would come, Sindh and Hind, they would come from that area. One person comes from Sindh to the Imam, and he speaks to the Imam, and in his language, the Imam responds in that language. The companions were there, they said, Yabna Rasulullah, this person is a foreigner, you speak his language? He He says, we are the Imams of all. We speak their languages. In fact, the Imams even speak the language of the animals. We're told there's a moment in time, this same 8th Imam is in a situation where a hunter goes and he finds the prey that is a deer. He finds the deer. When he finds the deer, at that point in time, he takes this deer and he's about to kill it or slaughter it. This deer, the Imam seems to be there. Imam Rada is there, and the deer speaks to the Imam. He says, look, Ibn Rasulillah, you can speak on my behalf. I'm a mother. I have 2 children. I have gone to try to give my children food, and I have been captured. I will come back. He's caught me, fine. But just allow me to give my children some milk, some food, and then I will come back. The Imam said at that point in time that I give you this ability. I take zamana, I take trust that this creature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told me it will go back and it will come back. It just wants to feed its children. And at that point in time, the Imam at that moment in time comes forward and takes the zamana. The mother deer comes back, and eventually this hunter sees the situation and he lets the animal go. This is the Imam who is a mercy on this universe, the same way as grandfather Rasulullah is rahmatan lil alameen. They were even a mercy for animals. So that's why when we say Islam is a champion of even animal rights, human rights are too high. We live in a world where people don't get human rights. La ilaha illallah. The Imam was saying, at least even give the animals their rights. And it's important for us to focus and understand these things. There are many gems to learn from the life of Imam al-Rida, but we also need to learn very quickly from the life of his son, inshallah, which we'll pick up also tomorrow, inshallah, and the sister of the Imam. Never forget Lady Ma'suma al-Qum, who is the sister of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. In fact, narrations say that Imam al-Rida has told us, if you go to visit me, make sure you visit my sister first in Qum. And she went on a long journey to make sure that she would meet her brother. And it's important for us to remember this. It's a similarity between the relationship of these brother and sister and another brother and sister that we know. How is that? The poet says, and I'll translate for those who may not understand, जब भी मैं क़ुम गया मशहद की फ़ज़ा से पहले, जब भी मैं क़ुम गया मशहद की फ़ज़ा से पहले, यूं लगा शाम गया कर्ब बला से पहले. The point is saying that whenever I went to Qum, before I went to Mashhad, that is where, whenever I went to Bibi Ma'suma, before I went to Khurasan, to Imam al-Rida, it was as if I was going to Sham, to Zainab, before Imam al-Hussein in Karbala. That is the relationship between these two individuals, the brother and sister, Imam al-Hussein and Sayyidah Zainab, and Lady Ma'suma in Qum, and Imam al-Rida. Never forget these two individuals. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Coming to the life of this blessed Imam, his son, the 9th Imam, at that point when the life is taken, towards the end of the life of the 8th Imam, narrations say the 8th Imam he was getting older and not having a son. He did not have a child. And so many of the Shia became confused because the Imam, the narration says he was in his mid-40s, either 45 or 47, when he did not have a child. You know, the only child of the 8th Imam is Imam al-Jawad. And at that point in time, they were saying, the Shias were saying, who's going to be the Imam? And remember, the 8th Imam had many siblings. So some people, even afterwards, some of the brothers of the 8th Imam tried to say they were the Imam. But the Shia, the Khasa, the close Shias knew that the riwayah and the narration from the Ahlul Bayt, that after Hassan and Hussein, there will be no two brothers that are Imams. And so they remembered that. But some people got off the track. At that point in time, when Shias began to get worried, and Allah said, don't worry. Allah has a plan, and in Allah's plan, this will be taken care of, don't worry. And when this happened, Imam al-Jawad came into this world. And at that moment, when the 8th Imam left this world, the Imam is roughly 8 or 9 years of age. That is the Imam. Now the question comes, can someone who's young like this become the Imam of the time? Or is it necessarily to be very old? For us, one thing that you and I need to make sure, and I'll emphasize this tomorrow, my dear brothers and sisters, the young and old alike, what is one thing that the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt should be known for in the West? What should they be known for in America? What should they be known for in South Carolina? What should they be known for in this area, in Spartanburg? What should they be known for? And this is a question that myself and other young speakers took to the scholars in the House al-Ilmiya of Najaf and asked those top scholars. And some scholars said different things. But one thing that constantly and consistently came up every single time was that as Shia of the Ahlul Bayt, you should be the foremost in knowledge. Right? That is in terms of knowledge, not only in the knowledge of religion, but the knowledge of the world. In fact, Sayyid Sistani, may Allah protect him, when he was asked by his students who asked for advice. He said, one of the things I recommend you to do is make sure that you excel in your education, make sure you specialize if you can, and make sure that you contribute to the body of knowledge in the area that you're studying. That, for example, we have textbooks. The textbooks may have a name that's not a Muslim or Shia name. Your name should be on the cover of the textbook that you are reading from and learning from. That contribution should be there. Therefore, we should be excelling in that regard. We are followers of Ali Muhammad. We are followers of Jafar Sadiq. We are followers of Baqir al-Ulum. So we must be in the top institutions. Go to the dukes of the world in the Ivy Leagues. We should encourage it. But with taqwa, with iman, with the love of the Ahlul Bayt and the akhlaq of the Ahlul Bayt. When we come to the life of this blessed Imam, the ninth Imam, the new rulership at the time came forward and said, look, how do I stay in power? So he said, we jailed his grandfather, didn't work. We made his father the heir apparent, that didn't work. What do we do? So he said, I need to, maybe what I can do is make him marry into my own family. So he decided to have his daughter, al-Fadl, marry the Imam. When he decided to do this at that point, then the court of his advisors and wazirs said, hold on one second. This individual, he's so young. You're going to get your daughter married? What is, and people are going to say that then he will get power and he's only a young child. At that point in time, it's not an ordinary child. This is not someone who is ordinary, he's extraordinary. This is what he means. Allow me to explain. This same individual is passing by, the ambassador is passing by his caravan. When he's passing by his caravan at that point in time, the narrations say that there are some children who are playing in the street. When the children are playing in the street, he's telling his wazir this story. He said, I'm going with my entourage, and these children are playing in the street. As soon as my entourage and my people come, all of the children begin to run. When all of the children begin to run, one young boy stayed there, he did not move. When he did not move, when he stayed there at that point in time, I asked the young boy, I said, why is it that everyone else ran and you stayed? He said, the reason is there were either three scenarios. Number one, either this road was too narrow that you could not pass and your people could not pass and we'd have to move. That was one. But I noticed the road was not so narrow. I didn't need to move. You had enough way to go by, number one. Or number two, I have done something wrong that I should be afraid of, so I run away like maybe someone else, but I know that I did not do anything wrong. Or the third situation is you are a ghanim and a tyrant, in which case I should not be afraid, but you should be afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This young Imam is saying at this age of 8 or 9, and he's explaining deen to this ruler of the time. At that point in time, he asked him, what is your name? He says, Muhammad, son of who? Son of Ali, son of who? Son of Musa al-Kafir. At that point in time, he understood. After Imam al-Rada, they used to call the descendants of Imam al-Rada, Yabna al-Rada. He said, this is Yabna al-Rada. This is not an ordinary individual. The same ruler goes a little bit further on his hunting journey, and he goes and he sends his bird, his falcon, for hunting, and it goes into the river. You may think these are old things. Believe me, I was on my way back from India and I was stopped in Dubai. And I'm at the airport and I'm checking in, and next to me comes this person who has two passports, and his Ishtasha and all that. He has one passport, one's his own. One is another passport that's not for his wife or child, or it's by himself. Apparently, he has on his shoulder his other friend. I mean, mashallah, you find out that other passport was for his falcon that he was traveling with. Subhanallah, in our world today, mashallah, the birds have passports, and some human beings are not given passports. At that point in time, the same thing was going on. He had his prized possession, his falcon. When he had his prized possession, his falcon, at that point in time, he took it towards the water and came back with something in his hand. And he brought it back to the Imam on the way back. He says, young man, tell me what is in my hand. Now the Imam could tell him what was in his hand, but look at how he answered. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made amongst his creations, one of the creations he has made is the bird or the falcon. And these falcons are taken by the rulers and they are sent towards the seas. And when they are sent towards the seas, they swoop down towards the water and they take out the fish from the water. And they bring back the fish. And the fish comes and it comes into the hand of the ruler. And with that, in the fist, the rulers of the time, they test the children of Ali Muhammad to see their knowledge. He had no answer. He was flabbergasted. He was astonished. That this is no. He told this to the wazirs to tell them that you think he's an ordinary child. This is not an ordinary child. This is an alim. Nonetheless, at that point in time, when he convinced them, he accepted. But before this, what led to the convincing? He said, then have a debate. They still were not fully convinced. He said, what do you want? He says, call the top scholar of the time and have him ask questions to this young boy. Then we'll accept. Okay. Who's the top scholar? They said the top scholar of the time was by the name of Yahya bin Akhtar. Yahya bin Akhtar was very old, very knowledgeable, the scholar of the time. He comes. And he says, ask the board questions. He says, you want me to ask the question? I'm the top scholar, I'm the chief justice. You want me to ask? He said, yes. He said, he thought, what question can I ask him that he won't know how to answer? He says, what is the kafara of someone who does hunting while they are in a state of ihram? What is the kafara? What is the penalty of someone who, while they're in a state of ihram, when you're not even supposed to harm an insect or a fly, of doing that? At that point in time, the Imam looks back, and as a young boy, he looks back and he says, your question is incomplete. Imagine looking at the top scholar, your question is incomplete. So what do you mean? By the way, in fiqh, in Shia and Sunni fiqh, one of the most difficult bab, or one of the most difficult sections of fiqh, is the rulings of kafara. And both Shia and Sunni school of thought benefit from the work of Imam Jawad. So he said, your question is not complete. So what do you mean? He says, was he hunting in the sanctuary or outside the sanctuary? In the haram or outside the haram? Was it day or night? Was this his first time or not his first time? Was he an alim or a jahil? Was he knowing the rule or not knowing the rule? Was this as something that he was repentant of or not? Did he do istighfar or not? Was it a small animal or a big animal? Was it a flying animal or a land animal? The Imam asked him question after question. This person was baffled. The same way that, sometimes people say that when someone steals something in Islam, then you're supposed to cut their hand. By the way, it's happened during the Imam's time. In our view, it's not that. You cut a part of the finger, but only after 19 conditions are met, including, was there a famine? Did this person have food? Was their family hungry? If any of those answers are met, that is, if they had any reason, you cannot do that. It's only when the person had no reason to stop them. That's why the Imam answered, they had no response. Then the Wazir said, if he can make Yahya bin Aktham speechless, then we accept. And the Imam came at that position. Why was he called? Very quickly, I know we're against the Salat time, we'll just conclude here. Why was he called Taqi? Why was he called Al-Jawad? According to the narrations, when the marriage ceremony came, the Imam gave 500 dirhams as the mahar for the wedding. But not only that, on top of that, he gave 10 du'as as the wedding gift to al-Fadl. And when he gave these 10, he said, these will help whoever recites them, not only in this dunya, but in the akhirah. So the Imam was generous and jawad, not only in this dunya, but also in the akhirah, number one. And number two, he was called Taqi. Why? Taqi means the one who protects themselves. From what? One was he used to protect himself from the courts of the rulers of the time. They used to do parties and merrymaking. Today you go to the Middle East and other places, they're very big on partying. Before they used to do it outside of their countries. Now they do it in their countries, mashallah. Same thing was going on at that time. At that time, during the Imam's time, that the Imam would not be in those gatherings. He protected himself from this guy, number one. Number two, and the final thing I'll mention here, inshallah, next time by committee will continue. He says the final thing here was, he says that this same ruler, his daughter al-Fadl would complain to him. Al-Fadl was not good. The Imam's lineage did not continue from al-Fadl. Al-Fadl was the princess. At that point, she used to complain. When she used to complain at that point in time, the narrations say, one day she complained and her father was drunk. The ruler, Abbas, was drunk. When he's drunk, in a state of drunkenness, he attacked the Imam at night. When he attacked the Imam at night, Fadl is the witness and the servant is the witness. The next day, they found the Imam okay. He's astonished. He says, was I in a state of the dream or out of my conscience? I thought I attacked you last night. Was that just a dream? Imam looked back at him and he says, no, you did attack me. But it was this amulet that I have from a dua from my grandmother, Fatima Zahra, called Hirz al-Jawad, that you find in, for example, a link today. That amulet protected. Principle we get here. Is the time of death written in Islam? The answer is yes, but can it be changed? Also yes. The time of death can be changed up to 7 times in Islam. That's why the narrations say that if Malakul Maut, the angel of death, is at your door and you give sadaqah, you can postpone your death up to 7 times. That's why when people say, for example, COVID and these things, that's why if you read Mafatul Janan also, every 3rd or 4th dua by Shaykh Abbas Qumi in Mafatul Janan, it says if you recite one of the merits of this dua, if you recite this dua, it will protect you from accidental death. What does it mean accidental death? That's the principle that we need to learn. Of course, this is the time of the azan, inshallah. We'll continue tomorrow. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this worship. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to learn from the lives of the Imam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this community in this gathering. A final request to please recite the Surah Al-Fatiha. For your marhameen, for the sponsors, marhameen, for marhameen of those who help make this community a possibility, and especially for all those who do not have someone to recite al-Fatiha for them this night. Surah al-Mubarak al-Fatiha ma'a as-salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد